Welcome to Echo Ekoji, a podcast brought to you by the Ekoji Buddhist Temple in Northern Virginia. I'm Andrea Chapmanand, current president of Ekoji, and I'm joined by my co-host and fellow Sangha member, Joe Gotchy.
Thanks, Andrea. I'm a member of the Seattle Buddhist Temple, lived 10 minutes from the White River Buddhist Temple in Auburn, Washington, and became a member of Ekoji's virtual Sangha during the pandemic. And we're so glad you've joined us for this special episode.
Today, we are honored to welcome Reverend Melissa Opel, a minister of the Buddhist Church of San Francisco and one of the bright, inspiring new leaders within the Buddhist Churches of America.
We'll be talking to Reverend Opel about her personal journey, the role of inclusivity in Jodo Shinshu Buddhism, the evolving face of the BCA, and what it means to live a spiritually grounded life in the 21st century.
So let's begin. Reverend Opel, could you begin by telling us a bit about your early life and how you first encountered Buddhism?
Absolutely. I was born and raised on the west side of Washington State. My parents unfortunately divorced when I was very young. So my grandmother helped raise my brother and I. She would come to our home and take care of us while my mom worked. So I was raised Catholic. That had always been part of my family's tradition. So I grew up in low-income housing. There was a lot of different challenges being, raised by a single mom during that time. My mom worked at Kmart, so she wasn't exactly bringing home the most amazing salary to raise two children on. Unfortunately, my biological father has some addiction issues, and so he wasn't really contributing to the home. And so I have an older brother. Just kind of bounced around a little bit from different schools, and but finally when I was in the eighth grade, my mom got what's called a farm home loan. And that farm home loan it's a little bit like Habitat for Humanity, except for somebody else builds your home for you. So a requirement of that is you have to live in a rural environment. And so we moved out to a city called Black Diamond. And so I had been in more of like the Kent Auburn area. Fun fact, you mentioned White River. The 7-Eleven that we used to ride our bikes to was kitty corner to the White River Buddhist Temple. Had no idea it was there. And so it was so funny to find out when I had guest spoke for them at one point in time. And so this farm home loan, like I said, put us in a very rural environment. So I went from kind of growing up in low-income housing, being surrounded by lots of different socioeconomic classes, lots of different cultures, to it was a very homogenous white part of Washington State. A lot of farm community was there at the time. The town of Black Diamond is so small. We actually had to go to Enumclaw for high school and junior high. And so that really was a big shaping moment for me, because when I was in the Kent School District, I was not doing so well academically. I had to do summer school, all sorts of stuff. But when I moved to Enumclaw, the teachers, I think, just had more time to really invest in students. So I had a history teacher pull me aside at one point in time and just say, what's going on? This shouldn't be your grades. You're a bright kid. And so we had a long conversation. And after that, I kind of realized maybe I wasn't so much living up to my full potential, and instead maybe following my family's name in Kent, which was not so great. My my dad and my brother were not the most astute academic students in the Kent School District, and that name followed, unfortunately. And so it was just a really big change for me. I was super involved in music, and that really allowed me to kind of blossom at the Enumclaw High School. And then suddenly, college was on the table. So I was my first in my family to go to college as well. So it was very kind of had a lot of different experiences growing up that I think really helped shape me later on as a minister.
So you were raised in a different religious tradition, like many of us, or no tradition at all. Can you share what led you to eventually find a home and embrace Jodo Shinshu Buddhism?
Yeah, being raised Catholic, I really liked the ritual of Catholicism growing up, but I had a lot of questions about things, especially why do good people who don't believe in the Bible or Christianity, why are they kind of destined to not so great things after they pass away? And that really bothered me. But then I had an experience when I was in my senior year of high school. I had the same priest since I had been born. He did all of my religious Catholic rites that you're supposed to get as a kid, and he was gone on vacation, visiting his sister in Ireland, and the religious education director, who he was really good friends with, kind of had a coup against him while he was gone in Ireland, and claimed that he was this like super angry person, and had would yell at people supposedly and throw things, and you know given what was happening in the Catholic Church during this time, a supposedly angry priest was really like the least of anybody's worries. But unfortunately, they transferred him. The diocese transferred him, and I was very brokenhearted about that. And then I just really saw this side of religion that was really kind of gross. And so when I left for college, it made me not want to be a part of religion whatsoever. And it kind of, I would say that was kind of the marking point of really starting to ask some serious questions. Unfortunately, when I went to Eastern Washington University. That's not the unfortunately part. It was a great college. Highly recommend it. A plus. But it was my first time away from home. I was very homesick and almost transferred away from school, but ended up, kind of getting pursued by this little, Bible group called InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. And, eventually I was like, okay, yeah, I'll go to a Bible study. Maybe I'll meet some friends this way, kind of thought process. And ended up getting very involved in the group, became a Bible study leader, became a worship leader later on. And, it was good to an extent, but once you started really having questions, it was very difficult to leave because my entire friend group was there. I'm taking these religion courses, and I'm starting to have all these questions. And I talked to somebody about it in InterVarsity, and they told me to stop asking questions because nothing good comes of it. And so it was just this really, I don't know, really just up and down sort of time with them. But I ended up leaving very hurt. I was originally supposed to go on to staff for InterVarsity, and at the last minute, they said they were no longer taking white women on staff because they had too many, and they thought I was oh well, and that I was overweight, and that wasn't biblical, and they thought I was gay, but had never had that conversation with me. I think the one that really stung the most out of all that, to be quite honest, was that they were counting me as a white woman, because up until that point, they had been counting me as Native American, because I'm part white, part Native American. My dad's family is indigenous, and I should say my grandfather is indigenous, and or that situation, was very hurtful. So I left like really scarred, and I had a local church that I was going to in Spokane, and it was a Foursquare church, which I didn't know was evangelical. I'd never like I didn't understand the concept of evangelical because I had never been really exposed to it. And InterVarsity claimed it was interdenominational, but it was also very evangelical. So you can imagine like a lot of like control stuff, and um, a lot of weird stuff around relationships and all that. So as I kind of settled into life at the Foursquare church, again, like still having questions, but I think as a Christian, you're taught to just like, oh, it's just a dry time in your faith. Like just keep pushing forward, just keep pushing forward. And so I was pushing forward a lot, but I ended up meeting my wife, and we started dating. And we kept it secret for a long time because we knew exactly how gays were felt about in this type of religious environment. So when I finally had the conversation with my pastor, I was asked actually to step down in leadership and to move in with him and his wife and 3 kids and get therapy and kind of go through this process to not be gay. And I remember sitting with my wife for a long time, and we were having lots of conversations about it. Her family would have felt the exact same way. My family felt the exact same way. And so, we decided to kind of forge forward together as a couple. And when we did that, then we were asked to, if we wanted to attend the church, we could, but not as a couple. And so we were asked to leave if we were going to be a couple. So we did leave. We had some hate mail sent to our house. We had somebody show up with a life ring, offering the life ring of Christ to us. It was really a very difficult time in our life, but it also, it revealed a lot of character about the church that we were at, which is, it's conditional. Everything about relationship is conditional. And, we would run into people we had known for years, and they would pretend like they didn't know us or wouldn't make eye contact. And so what it did though, is it gave me once I got through the initial hurt, it gave me a lot of space to start answering these questions that had been building up, and started reading a ton, talking to other people who identified as atheists or agnostic. And, so I started kind of bouncing back and forth between atheism and agnosticism. And eventually it was just like, yeah, I don't have any space for this in my life. I don't want it. And just kind of my questions were answered and just let it go. And that was fine for quite a while. And then just some life events happened. My wife and I went through a very difficult time in our marriage, and, just needed some support through that. So I was doing some counseling, and my therapist said, "Hey, you sound like a Buddhist. Your homework is to go to the Buddhist temple." And I said, no. I'm not doing anything with organized religion. Forget it. And so, we went through that over a couple sessions, and she said, here's the thing, is that ultimately, like, you're built as kind of a spiritual person, and you're not, kind of feeding that side of your life. And so, really, this is your homework. You have to go do it. And so that was my foray into Buddhism. I should say I had an intro to Buddhism class in college, but I slept through it. So it wasn't seed planting. It was seed planting. So yeah, that's how I ended up Buddhism.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness, that is a fascinating journey.
Yeah.
And what a wonderful counselor. We're grateful to your counselor.
Yeah, she's great.
So, was that the Spokane Buddhist Temple then? Was your first Buddhist temple? And what was that like? And then what was it that made you stay?
Yeah, so the first time we went to the temple was actually for their Bonadori. We were doing the open house tour. So, met with people downstairs, because that's where everybody was hanging out and doing food and things. And this couple that we met, super, super nice, like really wonderful, and had this great conversation with them. And when she sent us upstairs for the tour, she said, I'm looking forward to seeing you again. And I was like, oh, okay, that's a little presumptuous, but you're very nice. So I didn't say that to her, of course, but so we go upstairs, and we were the only ones there. The open house had actually ended, but the minister's assistant was still there, and he was like, "Oh, come on in. It's fine. Don't worry about it." So I was there with my wife and our friend Katrina, and we're just sitting in there, and he's like, "So what questions do you have?" And we were like, the standard, tell us a little bit about the temple. And then I asked him, I said, why Buddhism? Because he was Caucasian, and I wasn't expecting that. I think we all have these sort of stereotypes of what Buddhism is and isn't. And he didn't meet any of my stereotype expectations, which I loved. And he's a big guy, like a little over 6 foot something, had these big black thick glasses, kind of looked like a hipster, this awesome beard. And he, proceeded to kind of tell us a little bit about his life, and that kind of, same, like he went through this difficult time and needed support and somehow found the temple. And as he was talking about his journey, his experience, he started crying. And I thought, wow, what is it about this place that would make this sort of burly looking dude cry, get emotional? And, so it sparked a real interest to come back and see what was there. So the next Sunday we went back and did the service. And, when we first walked in, I just was really surveying the room, feeling very skeptical of, religion, right? Like I've just gone through all this hurt. But as I was looking around, I actually saw a gay couple, learned that they were married. And as they were, I just, I sat in the back, and Becca was with me, and we're kind of watching, and I'm watching people talk to them and be friendly to them, which, once somebody identifies you as gay in the evangelical church, at least in my experience, is, you're kind of like the plague. Like people don't, want to talk to you. They kind of are very suspicious of you. And for us to see them being like so welcomed was really impressive to me. But then when they sat down, the most impressive thing to me was that the one husband put his arm around his partner, and you didn't see anybody flinch, you didn't see anybody staring. I was probably the only one staring. And I was like, oh, this is really interesting. And then after the service, found out that they were involved in the board, and I was like, oh, so they can be gay and serve. And uh but the service itself, I think there was a lot of things going on for me in that moment, like just taking it all in. And so when we came to the chanting, and we were chanting the Jusege, there was just something that just sparked inside of me that I couldn't even tell you what it was. And I started crying. Like, and so I'm kind of like side-eyeing my wife as I, because I don't want her to see me, and I'm kind of, doing this, and like little kitty cat paws, like trying to get my tears before they fall, kind of a thing. And then the Dharma talk, it was a lot of language that I had been, hearing too, about interconnection. And it just, I don't know, it felt, I left feeling very, something like had kind of broke open. And my wife was like, I'll give you 3 times, and then, for you to get comfortable, and then I'm not going anymore. And of course she stayed. I think at first I thought she forgot that she was only coming 3 times, and then found out like she was actually liking it too. And so we stayed after that first time. I went back every Sunday. I went to every workshop that they offered, and any guest minister, and it was just, yeah, I had found my home.
Reverend Opel, there will come a day that you and I will sit down somewhere and we'll exchange some other stories about the first impressions and the reactions and what it meant to be embraced by
Yeah.
people at the temple. So you're openly gay, you're married to your wife, Becca. How has your identity shaped your spiritual journey and your role as a minister?
Yeah, I think that, we've talked a little bit about kind of the fallout of being one's authentic self. And so that was definitely a shaper of things. It left me, very um nervous to express my identity, my sexual orientation to people, because you just expect people to just, it was given the experiences, like you expect not great reaction. I think also living in Spokane at the time that we were there, we also dealt with, issues in the Spokane area, being gay, that also kind of shaped how one would, just I don't know, not present themselves. I've always had short hair. I can't have long hair. It drives me nuts. But I don't know, you're just kind of always on guard, I think is the way that it kind of shaped me to begin with. Uh, and coming into BCA, you know, because I only had contact with the Spokane Buddhist Temple and BCA, I was really ignorant to some of the issues that were happening in other temples. So for me, at the time, Bishop Amezu, Reverend Harada and Reverend Hirano were kind of the main drivers of the Center for Buddhist Education. And so when I started as a minister's assistant and was starting to go down to MAP sessions, like my sexuality was just like not even an issue. And it was so weird. I kept expecting, kind of the other shoe to drop of like, oh, you're accepted, but only like this much. Like you can do all of this, but you can't do this. Like you can be a certified minister's assistant, but not an ordained minister. Like that's what I was kind of waiting for. And so that really kind of blew my mind. And it was weird to not really have to stress about it. But when, kind of fast forward to like this time of getting ready to be transferred, there was a lot of like that same stuff came back up again, not knowing that some temples maybe struggle a little bit more with figuring out how to be an accepting place for LGBTQ plus. Um, and so that definitely reared up for me again. And so I think it's an insecurity because of I would say trauma that came from the original coming out process in a religious institution. I think that's just kind of maybe always going to be there. Like hopefully it'll continue to dampen down, but there's even now like I still have stuff still comes up. Yeah.
Thank you.
Many of us in Jodo Shinshu have heard the phrase, "We welcome you just as you are." From your perspective, what does that mean in the life of Sangha? Has that been true in your own experience? And how well do you think we as individuals, temples, and the BCA as a whole are living up to it? And then lastly, what more could we do to truly embody the spirit of welcome?
Yeah, it's a big question. I think that, for me, like I said, I've had very positive experiences around being LGBTQ plus in the temple. And, I think that when I think back to, what I was told of why I wasn't going to be coming on to InterVarsity staff, I think like, oh, I just can't ever imagine a world in which somebody would be told you can't be a member here because of XYZ. And I think that that's really wonderful. As part of a leader in the kind of evangelical Christian world, when I looked back at my time doing those things, I actually feel like I caused harm and really hurt people along the way. And as a Jodo Shinshu minister and a Jodo Shinshu adherent practitioner, I don't feel like I cause harm. And if I cause harm, it's because of my own bamboo foolish nature, right? Like it's me that is causing the harm, not the doctrine, not the teachings, not the anything of that. And so I think that when we really rely on our teachings and let that be our guide, that we have this really beautiful, wonderful, welcoming environment. But I think that there's skill sets that are missing for our sanghas, and it's not it's not their fault. It's a fact of like maybe there hasn't been exposure to it or education or training. I think when people come in with really difficult mental health issues, or maybe they're kind of an angry person because of where how life has gone for them, that we're not always so equipped to be compassionate for people's, you know, baggage that they bring with them, because we all have it. We all take it with us everywhere we go. And so I think that the limitations of the acceptance of everybody is embraced just as they are is more of, um, yes, you are absolutely 100%, 1000% embraced just as you are, uh, with Amida Buddha, but Sangha members might need more help in order to embrace fully. But I don't ever think that a Sangha member is purposely not embracing people just as they are. It just takes work, and but for the most part, I feel like our sanghas do really well. I think that we have one of the most welcoming environments that people come into, and if the person coming in can be patient as people learn, they want to learn, they want to accept. It's so I hope that if people come in that maybe aren't as well equipped, or coming in kind of defensive from past religions, it's we as the visitors to the temple also have to come with a responsibility to uh, be educated and learn and kind of have this back and forth with Sangha members. But I feel like the BCA is doing a lot of work to help educate on these fronts. We're doing work on teaching about how to be more inclusive for LGBTQ plus people. As a ministers association, we're very much focused on the LGBTQ plus group, especially transgender individuals, because there's a lot of suffering that's happening for this group. And as a religious tradition, I think we're one of the very few that are actually standing up for LGBTQ plus rights. And so I think that that's been really important that BCA does that. I know Bishop Harada is very much trying to do mental health trainings and helping ministers understand that much better, so that we can also be more welcoming in that way. So I do think that there's a lot of trainings and things like conflict resolution that are happening to kind of address some of these weak spots that we have.
Thanks for sharing those perspectives with us. I appreciate them. I'm sure our audience will as well. Could you share a milestone and maybe a challenge that you experienced on your path to Tokudo and Kyoshi ordination? And what did it feel like the first time you were referred to as Reverend Opel?
So yeah, the I think a milestone, the big milestone, it was certainly passing my last Kadai for Tokudo. So Kadai is the tests that you do. So you have these exams that you take, and so some of them are you're memorizing, and so it's a recitation of of either part of the Shoshinge or oh gosh, the Yogiman, and then there's other stuff that's like open book, like some of the wasans,
Mhm.
and I was struggling with the second half of the Shoshinge, the Zendo portion, and I kept forgetting. I had been the Han leader, and so I was just so focused on other people getting through their testing. I'm a horrible memorizer. I have ADHD, so I have some learning issues. Yeah, it was such a overwhelming. I don't think I've cried more in my entire life than Tokudo, because it was such a stressful environment. So it's like stress tears. So I just remember passing my final Kadai, and the instructor, we both just would like jumped up and we're so excited. And Reverend Kuwahara was like, you need to thank her. She was very gentle on me. And I tried this pass this test so many times. I was the last of us to pass our Kadai. We were getting ready to do ordination, I think like the next day, or maybe like a day and a half away. So it's just really getting down to the wire. And when we jumped up, she hugged me, and I hugged her too. And then it was this moment of like, oh, we're not supposed to be hugging. So because there's that separation between you and the instructor, and it's it's very much there not to you're not getting coddled by any means, but they're this kind of authority figure. So when she gave me this big hug, it was just such a relief. It was just I felt I felt like I could do anything in that moment. In that moment. So that was definitely a milestone. The challenge, beyond the memorizing, was absolutely a challenge. But not having a minister to work with, because I was at the Spokane Temple and Reverend Kusnoki was in Seattle, and so we would actually drive from Spokane to Seattle on Saturday. Like we'd get up at like 5 in the morning, drive to Seattle because it's like a 4.5 hour drive. I would work with Reverend Kusunoki. We would for Tokudo and for Kiyoshi. I would have lunch with my parents, and then we would drive home, and I would do service the next day for Spokane. So that was definitely a pretty massive challenge. For the first time I got called Reverend Opel, I I was like, oh, this is a mistake. This doesn't feel right. Like, we should not do that. So even now, it's people will say, well, what am I supposed to call you? And I'm like, well, Melissa? No, I mean, no, I guess I'm at the temple, so like, well, you can call me Reverend Opal, Reverend Melissa. And it just still feels like kind of wonky trying to figure out what people are supposed to call me, and having that sort of internal spark to just be like, oh, you can just call me Reverend Opal, and have it not feel weird.
Thank you.
Beautiful story. So backing up just a little bit, how was your experience studying at the Institute of Buddhist Studies, and what insights or tools from that time do you use most today in your ministry?
I love my time working at the Institute of Buddhist Studies. It's a really wonderful program. It would actually made it kind of intimidating moving here to the Bay, because so many of the ministers here in the Bay were my literal IBS instructors. So, but the time was great. It's really small class sizes. So when you're working on, like learning doctrinal works, talking about early Buddhism, women in Buddhism, you're getting to have a lot of conversation with, fellow students, but then, the professors are all incredibly knowledgeable, really fun to work with. It was, yeah, it's very, very good place to study Buddhism. I think it's a really great environment. Uh, what I use the most, so obviously when you're going into the Institute of Buddhist Studies, you're doing it for ministry purposes. If you're doing the Masters of Divinity, so because IBS is a partner with GTU, the Graduate Theological Union, you're actually able to take additional courses. You have these extra credits that you have to take courses for, kind of those elective things. And with GTU, you get all these different religious traditions that are all in their seminaries, and they're offering these classes. And so I really made it a point to take as many chaplaincy classes as I could. So I took a spiritual care and trauma course, which was just absolutely amazing. I also took this really great course from Dr. Bruntz that was Buddhism and medicine. And, these, they have like real world application to them. And so definitely my chaplaincy classes I've used the absolute most. But of course, the doctrinal classes. I mean, how can I be a minister without really digging into, the collected works of Shinran and our seven masters, and doing all of that work as well. So, there's some stuff that's just naturally part of your everyday work life. It's that base to it. But and I took my American Buddhism course with Dr. Mitchell. I did my final presentation was on inclusivity in the Sangha. And I have been able to build on that final work, and actually present that as a workshop to several temples and helping them build LGBTQ plus support groups, and to teach the Sangha, a little bit more about inclusivity and what it means. So that's been incredibly helpful. And then I elected to take field education as well. And so I was able to do that here at BCSF because I had transferred already. And it was really nice to have a chaplaincy mentor along with Reverend Adams as I, was digging into my first year here and doing, funerals and end of life care, which I had not had the opportunity, thankfully, to experience in Spokane. So that was a new thing for me. And so those were definitely things that became just invaluable as a minister.
So the gal who grew up in Black Diamond, Washington, a small little town, ends up serving in temples in both Spokane and San Francisco, two very different sanghas. How have those communities shaped your approach to the ministry?
I'm very thankful for my time in Spokane, and I still miss the Spokane Sangha quite a bit. But at the same time, it's yeah, it's like you said, that the two just could not be more different. So Spokane, has this really wonderful core group of folks that have been there since I arrived. And then there's just, people that are kind of constantly coming and going. So we were even back there last April for a funeral, and it was amazing how many people I didn't know that were just like brand new and had no idea who I was. And that was, kind of wild. And so, I had to learn how to kind of distill Jodo Shinshu in a very welcoming, easy format, sort of to start off with, and try to capture people or maybe captivate people enough to stay. So I think that Spokane, at the time that I was there, it's inevitable that conflicts are going to happen in temples. And so, I saw very kind of what I saw in Christianity is, people get hurt and then they leave and go somewhere else. And there's not an opportunity for like conflict resolution as much. And so that just doesn't really happen kind of a legacy temple like BCSF, where people have been here for generations. And so when a conflict occurs, maybe they just stop talking to each other for a while, but eventually things kind of smooth over. So there's time. Yeah, people aren't going to leave their spiritual home because they don't like somebody. So that was a big difference. And of course, racially, the temples are incredibly different. So, I was in Spokane working with folks that were, had little to no understanding of Buddhism and Jodo Shinshu to start off with, especially Jodo Shinshu. So I also started to get a chip on my shoulder about certain types of people because, like, we would in Spokane, because it was an all volunteer Sangha, we would get these young men that would come in and say, they'd attend one service, and then when do I get to give a Dharma talk? So, sometimes newcomers are very bold. And at a temple like BCSF, where it's just a very established temple, I don't think I've ever had anybody come up and ask me when do they get to give a Dharma talk. So like you can really see it in that. And the cultural differences too. So Spokane can be more there's not as much like legacy things. So there's this real strong want and desire and real passion to keep cultural components of the temple going, like the Bonadori, the specific services, the New Year's Day celebrations. So it it's fun to watch Spokane honor many parts of the Jodo Shinshu tradition, and try to keep those things going because of the gratitude for the founders of the temple, the Terrell family, and the folks that were here that built the temple and left it for us to encounter. Whereas, BCSF, there's a lot of traditions, and so when you want to change something, it's a lot of conversation, it's a lot of history lessons, and so it's maybe a little slower moving to do different things. But then, you also have this really established Sangha that many people work super well together, and so things just kind of happen too, and uh so it's hard to describe how different they are, but it's also a lot of wonderful similarities too, because there's, real passion for the Dharma.
Thank you.
Beautiful. From your perspective, what are some of the ways that temples can foster belonging and support for the LGBTQ plus members and their families?
I think one of the things that not every temple can do, because it's just not possible, but just having a gay minister or somebody in leadership that is part of the community, it's like that representation, don't represent a group without that group present. And so I think it's really important, if you're wanting to be more inclusive, if you're wanting to kind of grow in that sort of way and support families, it's really important to ask them, like, what do you want? What do you need? We can't make assumptions about people and what they need. So it's really important to, if you're going to form a committee to work on this, that you make sure that you have representation of the group that you're trying to foster and build. And so, not every temple is going to need an LGBTQ plus group. That population might not be present at the time, or there's situations, especially in some smaller towns, where people don't feel comfortable still coming out. So in that case, it's really important to use inclusive language to make sure that you're using proper pronouns. So there's things that we can do that are like very simple, but these are it's like things that you're looking for as an LGBTQ plus person when you go into a space. So, having name tags that have pronouns on them, that's a very easy one and a very welcoming thing to do. That lets people know you actually care about my pronouns, you care about my identity. When you're talking from the pulpit, from giving your Dharma talk as a minister, when I come across things like language that is very male-centered language, especially around Amida Buddha. Amida Buddha is neither man nor woman, and so I change when I'm talking about Amida Buddha, I change the pronouns to they, and I talk about Amida Buddha as they. So this is a way too. So this is that sort of inclusiveness, using examples of things that are happening with the LGBTQ community in a thoughtful way, in Dharma talks or in workshops. So I think that there's these simple things that can be done, but then it's again important to maybe consider having an LGBTQ plus group. Gardena is doing wonders with their Ichimi group. So I always reach out to Reverend John and talk with them because they can really help. And then we are starting a thing here with the Ministers Association, where we're going to have a national LGBTQ plus group. So I'll be heading that up and looking forward to getting that off the ground. So we're definitely doing things to help support temples with that.
Thank you for both your perspective and also your guidance in that regard. Very much appreciated. So how do you envision the role of women evolving in BCA and Jodo Shinshu in the years ahead here in the United States?
I really love Reverend Patty's book, The Currents of Change. And I think it shows a lot of what our Sanghas are looking for in terms of that kind of interaction with the minister. And I find that here at BCSF, I'm the first female minister since 1898. So we have female ministers assistants. Reverend Elaine Donnellan has been here for a long time. But I'm the first female resident minister that has been here, and I'm the first openly LGBTQ plus minister that we know of as well. And so, I think that it's wild to me to think that there are temples that have never had a female minister. And so that means that Sanghas don't get to experience a woman's perspective on the Dharma. And, it would be nice to say that men and women think the same, but we don't. Some people do. We have crossover, but like for the most part, we have different perspectives. We live life in a different way, because of the healthcare system, our bodies, all sorts of things. We experience things like menopause, perimenopause, and all of these different perspectives that do kind of change the way that we interpret and look at the Dharma. And then also, I think as women, we're looking for the female's perspective in the Dharma, and sometimes it's kind of hard to find and suss out. And it's important to kind of have that academic study of it, of how have women been treated in the sutras, and how accurate is this against the wisdom and compassion of Amida Buddha and Shakyamuni Buddha. So we can start to ask all these questions that are very important to us as women, but I think are very important for all Buddhist practitioners to hear and dig into and understand. And so, I think that we always benefit from balance. So, my ideal in my mind would be that, our ministers association would be at least 50-50. I think that would be really wonderful. I'd love to see a female bishop at some point in time. I'm nominating Reverend Shibata for that. But I think that it's just really important for all voices to come forward, because we're a better community when we have representation from everybody. And I think that we need more representation of female voices in our sanghas and in our tradition. And I think we're getting there. I mean, I think, a little over 25% now of the Ministers Association, which is wonderful. So it's nice to have other women coming on board and being interested in ministry. But we still have a long ways to go. I think one of the things I would really love to see is that every female minister that starts actually makes it to retirement. Because I think that we lose female ministers quite a bit, and I don't think we've really explored why that's happening, and I think that's really important. But having said that, I will say that our Ministers Association right now is incredibly supportive. Reverend Adams really wants to see those numbers change too. And so having people who are maybe considered gatekeepers, being willing to open that gate and usher people through is really, really important. So I think we have a lot of pieces in place for it.
Thank you.
From an administrative perspective, I was overjoyed when Terry was elected first
Yes.
president of the BCA. I was just so happy for her and us as well. So thank you for those valuable insights. As a relatively young minister, what do you see as the most pressing challenges and opportunities facing the BCA today?
Yeah, I think that the biggest, so many possibilities of how to answer this question. I think the biggest issues that we're having is, obviously retaining members. I don't think that our numbers are going down because people are leaving. Unfortunately, it's because they're passing away. And so, finding a way to reverse this trend is really important. And I think a big piece of it is as people are leaving religion in general, there is this real push with young people that they want to be part of a community and they want to be in places that are safe places. So it's really important for each temple to kind of look at, how their temple culture is. And when I say culture, I don't mean racial culture. I mean like the like kind of like company culture, like, so what is it that we allow people to get away with that make this place not safe?
Mhm.
Do you have people who are in open conflict with each other? Is gossip really bad at your temple? Are people getting hurt? How are you treating volunteers when they come? And so I think it's almost sort of the HR of the temple. And so I think that if we want to attract young people, we need to make sure that our temples are not toxic. And we need to deal with those behaviors. And so, that might mean some uncomfortable conversations where we have to tell somebody, we love having you here, but until this behavior changes, please join on Zoom. And I can't imagine getting into a place like that. I really would never want to have to do that. But the question is are we willing to do that? Are we willing to actually say to people, your behavior is harmful, you're hurting people, and you're accepted just as you are, but you're also in community and you have a responsibility to the Sangha. And so I think that that's a place in which come as you are, embrace just as you are, can go too far. We're embraced as we are by the doctrine, but you still have community standards to uphold. It's not a free for all to treat people meanly. So I think that's a one aspect, and I think that we need to look a little closer at why families have left, why like the kids aren't coming from our older generations, and really kind of ask ourselves some hard questions. There's nothing about the doctrine, in my opinion, that's a turnoff to people. I haven't encountered anybody that said I left because I don't like Amida Buddha, and so why we have to ask the harder questions of why have people left, and how can we change that? How can we really care and support people? So I have lots of ideas of how to do that, but we don't have enough time.
No, no, but we're in the home stretch here. So we have a couple more quick questions for you, but I'm going to follow up on this. How can we connect? By we, I mean temples, the larger BCA community. How can we connect with people, especially the younger generations, who may or may not come from a Japanese American background, but are curious about Buddhism?
This is a difficult question, and this is, I think, something that's difficult in our temples. We have words that we use that people have no idea what they mean, and so trying to find ways in Dharma talks and in temple language to translate those words to make it more welcoming. But then, for our older members, this is hard, right? Because this feels like a loss of culture. This feels like a loss of meaning. And so we also have to learn how to balance. So if we're going to do something for newcomers to make them feel welcomed, what are we doing for our elders that have been here? What classes are we offering for them? How are we nurturing them as they age and in the Dharma and support them? So I think that we're in a place where we have to walk a very fine line of welcoming and kind of making our space more open to people who maybe don't come from the same cultural background as most of our members, as many of our members, but we can't do it at the expense of our current members.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, really key. But there's all sorts of things that we can do to welcome folks. I just did our Taiko group is mostly young folks, and instead of doing very standard like intro to Buddhism with them to try to get them interested in the temple, I bought pizza and salad, and we had just a chat. Like we just sat around and hung out and chatted. And so I think that we need to think about how we're interacting with the ages and be age appropriate as well.
Thank you.
What does Jodo Shinshu have to offer Americans today who are seeking a spiritual home?
Jodo Shinshu, I think, offers so much to people, especially Americans. We're in this very, kind of dog eat dog sort of country, where, you just constantly are putting your needs first and thinking only of ourselves often. It's kind of the culture that we're raised in, that it's okay to kind of push other people down if it gets you ahead. And I think that that's really wearing. I think it's wearing on the people that get pushed down. And I also think it's wearing on the people that are having to hurt other people to get ahead, or the sacrifices that are made to meet certain expectations about salary and jobs, and all those types of things that are really built into our culture. We're also in a time, of course, of great political division that is causing a lot of pain and suffering for lots of people. And so even, the folks that are on the side that feels very angry and hateful, even that, as a Jodo Shinshu practitioner, when we really think about Shinran's teachings, and there's in the Tani show where he's talking about not everybody is built to do things a certain way, but we're one step away from being that person. It's our causes and conditions. And so once we learn to kind of have that empathy for people, because we can start to see ourselves in that place with that possibility, it starts to change how you think about other people. So, Jodo Shinshu really offers, I think, this deep self-reflection to see the world through a different lens, through a world of wisdom and compassion, a world where you are embraced just as you are. And I think that this idea of, like, I can go out into the world, and no matter where I go, Amida Buddha embraces me. So even if I encounter difficult people, difficult situations, I am still embraced by Amida Buddha. And how many people get to walk around the world and feel like no matter what, I have something on my side that is making my life better, that accepts me as I am, where I can be fully myself and not have to have fear about that. And so I think that Jodo Shinshu offers just this completely different view of the world that is so um, not in the American mindset. And it takes us finally out of ourselves and gives us an opportunity to see the interconnection. All of the things that make me me are not from me. They're from all of the people and the places that I encounter, my experiences that I've had. And so everything begins to shift. Everything begins to soften when we really allow ourselves to see the world through Amida Buddha's lens. And so I think that, Jodo Shinshu offers peace to people, and I think we can all use some of that. So, we're in such a lucky place to get to practice this tradition. And yeah.
I am immensely grateful that you have joined us today. And I hope that the larger BCA community and people who are seekers will watch and listen deeply to the words that you've shared with us today. If someone listening is struggling with identity, with faith or belonging, what message would you want them to hear?
It's okay. You're okay. I think that reach out to somebody, call me. You can call me, you can reach out to me. Find somebody at one of our temples that you connect with, and don't give up. I think we have to put ourselves in hard places sometimes to grow and to find ourselves. The best thing I ever did in my life was listen to that therapist and walk through the door at the Spokane Temple. My life could not be more different than the day that I did that. And, it was really the heart of why I became a minister, is I wanted to be able to give back in the same ways that I had been embraced and kind of cared for.
Yeah.
And so, like, there is a tradition out there, even if it's not ours. I'm pretty sure it's ours, but there's a tradition out there, and there's a place for you, and we'll help you find it. You don't have to do it alone. And I think those are the most important things.
Thank you. Thank you.
Finally, what is your hope for the future of Jodo Shinshu in America, and what does it mean to you at its heart?
My hope for Jodo Shinshu in America is that our temples would be busting with members to the point where we were starting new temples in new states and in new cities. I think that this is a beautiful tradition that really embraces and enhances people's lives, and I think that our world would be a better place with more Jodo Shinshu practice in it. And so that would be my greatest hope, is for that to be the case, that we move back into growth, because there's a lot of folks that have never heard of Jodo Shinshu, and I know that if they encountered it, their life would be altered in such a beautiful, deep way.
Could not agree with you more. Reverend Opel, thank you for sharing your story, your heart, your vision with us and our listeners. Your openness and insights are a gift to the entire BCA community and beyond.
Absolutely. Your path as a minister, a partner, and a practitioner reminds us that the Dharma meets each of us right where we are. We are grateful to walk this path with you.
For our listeners, thank you for tuning in to Echo Ekoji. Be sure to visit Ekoji's YouTube channel to find more conversations like this one.
And remember, the path of Shin Buddhism is one of deep listening, boundless compassion, and unconditional welcome. Reverend Opel, would you lead us in closing Gassho?
Absolutely. Please join me in Gassho. Namo Mirabutsu.
Namo Midabutsu.
Namo Mirabutsu.
Namo
Namo
Midabutsu.
Mirabutsu.
Namo
Namandas.
Midabutsu.
Namandas.
Namandai. Thank you so much.